Welcome to our Crafting a Digital Print workshop tutorial. The point of departure today is based around this distinction between applying our scripted actions and macros in Affinity analytically, applying them analytically, compared with applying them programmatically for prescriptive outcomes. Now, the underlying subtext then is not getting lost along the way. And I think that has been the recurring theme in a lot of our consultations, conversations, and comments during the week, where the intention, therefore, is to be, in the first instance, clear about our aims and objectives, so we're well prepared when those inevitable surprises enter the fray. In other words, to be at our very best, just in case that moment happens to turn out to be the most remarkable encounter we ever have. Now, that's the setup. That's the impulse where I'm coming from in response to these questions, these topics, and in particular to primarily embed what we're doing within not just the workshop's idea of a post-capture workflow, but the reality that so many of us engage with, encounter along the way, where we do hit these roadblocks or these forest trails or dead ends that take us somewhere else, not just unexpected and therefore potentially welcome, but maybe less welcome than we might at first suppose. So to make sense of this, let's have a look at those topics and I'll walk you through them and then go to the expanded index of a workshop to point out where these questions, these topics are coming from within the plethora of everything that we cover in our Crafting a Digital Print workshop. This first question, these scripted enhancements, I can easily apply them to my images, but I'm still often unclear about my intentions, let alone, and especially when I'm in that analytical phase rather than programmatic phase, where I'm trying to understand what it is in my images after the fact of their capture that I'm wanting to evolve, I'm wanting to tease out tension and present, at least in the first instance, to my satisfaction of that engagement. So that's a wonderful question, which echoes many of the topics that have been raised in other tutorials. So I put that first as a continuation, but also a focus for this Crafting a Digital Print tutorial. And then we get to specific questions about those actions in Photoshop or the macros in Affinity, and this distinction between reattaching highlights and our highlight bump mask. And are they inversions of one another or are they doing something else? And does it make sense to use them together, one after the other? And if so, in what order? Fantastic question. That begs the larger questions. Why would I do this? What is it about my image, let alone the meaning, the emotional engagement and so forth, that then is conjured up from my image by doing such things to it, and on it goes? Great question. And then I understand these actions, these enhancements, but you talk about not just applying them, but perhaps modifying them, tweaking them, refining them to one's own point of departure, one's intention, instead of just playing our default settings. And we went over that in the Adobe Photoshop tutorial. But here we've got an even more focused engagement with the same idea. Noting, this came from a friend, in a tussle between staying with Photoshop or moving to Affinity. And they have observed our luminosity curves action works in Photoshop quite differently to how it works in Affinity. Again, really acute observation, which opens up a whole series of other considerations, which is, can, in fact, we do the same things in Affinity that we can do in Adobe Photoshop and vice versa? And then from a different consultation, questioning the title of the workshop, Crafting a Digital Print, because in the workshop, exhibition prints is certainly one outcome of our file preparation. But also in other recent Crafting a Digital Print tutorials, we've looked at fine art applications, web galleries, photo books, pre-press proofing for commercial book production, and so on. And the question is, are these post-capture workflows, are they equally applicable to all of these other outcomes? Or am I missing something that I might need to be aware of or do along the way in order to adapt and modify those default workflows of yours to these other outcomes above and beyond the fine exhibition printing? So let's set the scene by looking at that aspect of the workshop that these questions are coming from. Here's the detailed read me first, introduction, expanded index. This is the current version. Of course, we update these workshops many times throughout the year. And if I go to the first page of the index, I've highlighted tutorial 043, which was the tutorial last year where I went through the entire workflow from raw capture all the way to exhibition printing. And these questions are related to, and remember this is a PDF file, so you can search for keywords and find in these 18 pages where we cover these considerations in the workshop's resources. So we're not going to rehash what's already in the workshop, we're just going to seek clarification. We then look at that slide from the workshop, this post-capture workflow in 3 stages, how we try and simplify and understand the complexity of what is involved when you are going beyond the referent, remembering this line in the sand between establishing the mood and refining our intellectual intent and emotional focus, as we talk about in the workshop and elsewhere, going beyond the referent, beyond the witness documentation to try and artistically, poetically, evocatively, politically, whatever the framework is, perform the image as something above and beyond the referent, but nevertheless tied to it. So it's here that our considerations lie in answer to these questions. It's in the 3rd stage of this workflow, which this workshop is dedicated to. Which brings us to the central hub behind these questions, which is our Crafting a Digital Print Toolkit, where we've got over a dozen scripted enhancements, both as Photoshop actions and Affinity macros. And the first specific question about our reattaching highlights versus our highlight bump masking. Do we use them together? Why would we? How would we? Are they just the inversion of one or the other? So first things first, let's have a look at where these 2 actions appear hierarchically in our toolkit. Reattaching highlights is at the very top of the stack, whereas our highlight and shadow bump masks are positioned quite differently. And this bounding box around those first 5 enhancements, beginning with reattaching highlights that we test out on every image to see if indeed analytically that image benefits or just makes us feel better while trying to resolve other things about that image, intellectual intent, emotional focus, poetic revelry, and so on. And then these are not also RANs, but they're subsidiary. So there is a few seconds revision from tutorial 043 where we break this down, but that's the theory. And that's fine as theory goes. It's wonderful, it's comforting. You can curl up with it, but it's the doing that really matters. So let's begin in Photoshop because these questions come from people who primarily are working in Photoshop. Case study number 1, a quite ordinary photograph of a country service station, thousands of kilometers from here. An unremarkable document where I have no intellectual or emotional content attached to this image. It was just something I found interesting, a moment I couldn't resist capturing while en route to somewhere else. And all I've done with the Hasselblad tilt shift adapter is reposition the lens while the sensor remains vertical. That's the only manipulation in camera to this image. But when the referent in front of the lens doesn't capture hearts and minds, what do I do? That's the subtext behind the first question. We say you therefore have to put something between the viewer and the image as it exists. It could be in an exhibition or wall label, telling a story, contextualizing the images, where they are coming from, the thesis that gave birth to that engagement, and so on. But here it's just a snapshot made on a beautiful medium format digital camera. Nevertheless, what do? The simplest response, of course, is a vignette. Let's position that like so. Go to our quick mask so we can see the feathering, and let's apply 500 or so with that quick mask off. And we're working with an RGB image in an RGB workflow. Therefore, I cannot bend this RGB curve because that will change hue, saturation, and brightness. we have to keep those red, green, and blue points on that curve in the same ratio. So our only means of darkening those edges and not radically changing the color of the sky and its saturation is to keep that straight. So let's darken that, and you can see straight away. And especially if I unclip and begin moving that mask so the unvignetted area is pointing in the same direction as the drawing composition, before and after, and straight away we renegotiated our engagement with the image that changes our reading of it in ways that were not in front of the camera. Now, that's trivial in a sense, but there's an example of how we put something between the viewer and what was in front of the lens, as I've just shown you, with only the smallest redistribution to tension, both the figure-ground relationships and our relationship to them. Now, what about that question, comparing and analysing reattaching highlights versus highlight bump masking? Here is an image from the Black and White Digital Image Workshop. Dear friend, working with his beautiful Leica monochrome digital camera. We applied equalization, shadow bump masking, midtones, and there is a highlight bump mask. So there's the file as presented by my dear friend, and there's what I did to make it fit and ready for exhibition printing and carrying the weight of his intentions captured in this magical moment. Now let's turn on highlights. This is the bump mask, on and off. Now where to look? What about an area like this? On and off. It's making the brightest values in the highlights that little bit brighter. And look at the dimensionality and the presence this conveys before and after. But we've got to dig a little deeper, don't we? Because the question is not about highlight bump masking. It is about reattaching highlights versus highlight bump masking. So let's work with a simple uniform step wedge from maximum black to screen white. To save time, I've already applied those two actions from our Crafting a Digital Print Toolkit, the reattaching highlights and the highlight bump mask. Let's compare and contrast. There's reattaching highlights, before and after. No effect on the shadows, no effect on the midtones, but an interesting effect on these values. But it's not a tear-stained face, it's not a magnificent vista. So with a step wedge, I'm trying to remove as much of my aesthetic judgments, my feelings about these effects, to see analytically, not programmatically, but analytically what is going on. Let's have a look at the highlight bump mask. Maybe you can see from these thumbnails, these masks, they are affecting very different registers of the highlights, turning one on and then the other, and then turning everything off with the Alt key, before and after, before and after. You can see the extension, and these techniques came from the analog darkroom, attempting to work out, or at least according to my feelings, how Edward Weston himself, his images, whether they were portraits or landscapes or portraits of rocks and trees, took on this presence, that pyrogallic extension of the eloquence of those midtones, but with sparkling highlights jumping out of the fray. No, they're not the same. They're certainly not the inverse of one another. But to make sense of this, we need to apply these conditions in real-world undertakings and then stopping for a moment and asking ourselves the more important question: does that aid and abet programmatically, not analytically, my engagement with the referent and what I choose to do about the referent, whether I'm trying to polish and perfect it, documentary, witness photography style, or whether I'm trying to undertake a transformation before and after, a transformation where the dimensionality, the presence, the ability to inhabit the time and space captured within this moment that can then traverse, maybe not eternity, but at times feeling like we're traversing eternity because of the possibilities that are now, before the fact, illuminated. So hopefully that, as an example of the application of these enhancements in our workflows, and how we go about using those enhancements and the questions they help beg about what it is we're doing. Not just analytically, though they're incredibly helpful to work out, do I need to reverse the lighting? Our reverse overlay masking does that in seconds, and thereby prevents us from rushing out of the picture from dark to light, as we're wont to do psychologically and experientially, and instead dwell within the premise of the picture, within the scene and the agency we project on it a little longer. And again, a refrain from the Crafting a Digital Print workshop is how, in fact, do we capture hearts and minds independently of the referent, independently of what was captured in front of the lens. There you go. There's another excuse. It's also about being really well prepared for when the unexpected enters the fray, and those evaluating things above and beyond our own construction, our own desires, our own abilities just suddenly happen. Yes, they happen more rarely, it would appear, with digital processes compared to the alchemy of the darkroom at the speed of a dripping tap, where suddenly things would happen at a level that you apprehend, but by means and ways that you cannot observe other than its outcome. Quick, I better stop the toning at that point. It's remarkable. How on earth did that happen? I didn't expect it. So it's also about being ready for those surprises when they appear, to not just recognize them, but also champion them. But that's all very well. And it's equally simple to say, yes, the Crafting Digital Print Toolkit applies to crafting a digital web gallery image, or crafting a pre-publication, pre-press file preparation, and so on. It's easy to say that. There are some obvious exceptions, though. For example, if I'm working in cultural heritage, fine art reproduction, boy, reattaching highlights, we use that all the time. Not on the preservation master file, not on the archive file, but on the derivatives we make from it, fit for purpose derivatives. Works on paper, 2D works on paper. Reattaching highlights is unbelievably important for those incredibly fine lines, barely distinguishable from the texture and presence of the paper itself, carrying that work of art ahead of us into the world. Reattaching highlights just adds a dimensionality and a presence, as it does to landscapes and portraits and everything else, to 2D works on paper. But unlike in a portrait, unlike in a landscape, I don't think I've ever used reverse overlay masking to relight a 2D portrait, unless, of course, you don't have scene calibration, flat fielding in your workflow. Then, of course, reverse overlay masking based on a flat field of uniformity can do that scene calibration for you. But that's the only time that such a thing is applied in a cultural heritage digitization workflow. So again, that is a simple example that, yes, we've got these 12 and counting specific enhancements scripted for you in the first instance to analytically apply and see how they work in the workflow, but then say yes, no, yes, and accept them as part of that third stage of our post-capture three-stage workflow, trying to refine and enhance these other considerations above and beyond the referent, at least beginning with our feelings about the referent, let alone what else it might serve us and others on their behalf, as a reflection of an engagement through oneself about what it is that stopped you in your tracks at that time and that place, and captured that image to then bring home and represent something way above and beyond just that moment, if nothing more, the memory of it. Well, as always, it's a delight to share all of this with you, answer your questions, and in the hope that we can offer something not just in support of you studying with us, undertaking these workshops and consultations, but particularly to engage and interest you in the things that interest us, which is the wellspring, the whole reason that we provide all of this knowledge, these insights, research-based outcomes for you to test and evaluate in your own workflows, in your own life. And as always, we look forward to the questions and the comments that come back to help us chart how we move forward and what else it is that we can do, not just to clarify, but also extend your engagement and enjoyment. As always, take care and all the best with these adventures in the world of digital imaging. See you next time. Cheers.